adventure, a story of risk and loss, of love, betrayal, and heroism. Of love, betrayal, and heroism. A story where good is warring against evil, and glorious deeds wait to be done.
Morning. Oh man, we are on week 2 of our series, Storytellers, but before we dive into that, I want to encourage you to make plans now to be here for Easter. Last Easter during the pandemic, it was literally Joey back there, Scott, Cassandra, and Amber. We were all up here and had our own little Easter service online. It was miserable. It was good, but it was very lonely preaching to an empty room. So this Easter, man, Quinn, you did it all, bro. You got us waters and everything. This Easter, I want you to go ahead and make plans to be here. I told Scott, I said, this is going to be a victorious, big Easter for us, and I want you to pack a snack because we're just going to go in this Easter. We are going to celebrate that Christ is still risen. Can I tell you that throughout these past few years, that it's easy for us to think that Christ has forgotten about us, but he hasn't. It's easy for us to think that Christ dropped the ball, but he hasn't. It's easy for us to think that Christ may be dead, but he isn't. So this Easter, we're not just going to celebrate the victory of his triumphant rise from death, but we're also going to celebrate the fact that he is still alive today. Still alive today. So make plans to be here Easter, and then make plans to be here Good Friday, and take communion together and things like that. But we are on week 2 of our series, Storytellers. This past week, I was trying to be a loving, romantic husband, and I went to our mirror in my bathroom on my side of the bathroom because I know that's where everybody tends to go for some unknown reason. We have 2 counters, but everybody gravitates to my counter. I don't know why, but I was like, I'm going to be a good husband. I'm going to write something to my wife on this mirror. I've seen it on movies. It works. I'm going to try it out. So I said, here we go. I heart you. No, actually, this was different. I wrote love you real nice and cursive, like I was big L and everything. Just love you, Rena. And she was like, oh, it's so sweet. So she wrote love you more on the mirror. You know, I was like, oh, this is so great. Now, let me tell you, when you have 5 kids in the house, there's no such thing as romance. There's absolutely no such thing as being romantic. There's no such thing as romance. Because I went out and I went to go do some work, and then I came back home, and my kids took the exact same dry erase marker, and Asia was the first little culprit, and she wrote, but let's be honest, you both love me the mostest because I'm your favorite child. You love me more than the rest of them. Signed, Asia, your fave. I'm like, love you, Rena. Love you more. And not only did she write that, but she started drawing diagrams to our names to show that you, it pointed to us, her parents, loved her more than her siblings. And I said, what is happening right now? So I said, all right, cool. So we're going to fix this. So I got the little dry erase marker. I went back to the mirror and I wrote, Asia, we love you all equally, in all caps. We love you and your siblings. Love mom and dad. So you would think that would be the end of it, but of course not, because then Alana gets the marker. And she comes and she writes, but you know I'm really your favorite. I'm the best child that you have. Alana. It's like, are you kidding me? What is going on right now? So I was like, guys, can we have a conversation real quick? This is supposed to be a moment for me and your mom to share, not a family love letter to each other. So I leave, and then all of a sudden I go back to my mirror, and my son has erased what my wife has wrote, love you more, and my daughter Kira has wrote, Kiki was here. And I was like, what is happening in my house? What is going on? So I gave them that threatening look. I gave them that look like, y'all got one more time to write on this mirror. And that's it. So I went back, and I wrote this nice long letter. Rena, you're such a blessing. I love you so much. Thank you for being the greatest wife, greatest mom, so on and so forth. And then she wrote the same thing, love you more. And I was like, you can't put no more thought into that thing? Like, you know, go on Google and Google something. What do you write on a mirror to your husband? Find something. And Asia tried to write something so I wouldn't get mad at her. She drew the biggest heart that she could possibly draw. and wrote, "You guys are so cute." And I said, I'm going to kill that child because she is not taking me serious. But that's the way life is sometimes. Sometimes we try to write a story and other people try to interject in our story. Other people try to put their own feelings and own this into our stories. A lot of times what happens is we say, I'm going to get my life right with Christ, and then something happens in our life that messes us up. Something happens in our life that derails us, and then all of a sudden everybody wants to tell us what we are and what we're not. Everybody wants to tell us what we should be doing and what we can't do, and how we should be acting and how we shouldn't act. And they want to take over and they want to co-author our stories with us. They want to write an autobiography of our life. And I'm like, no, that's not what I want you to do. I just want to write what I feel I should be doing according to God. When I wrote on the mirror, I was like, this is what I want to do because I want to make my wife feel special. Why you got to interrupt my story? But if you think about your life, for some of us, we try to live this life for Christ. Then somebody does something to try to co-author our story. And you have two options at that moment: to focus on Christ or focus on what they're doing. Here's the other thing that happens. Sometimes it's not a person, sometimes it's a thing. For some of us, it's alcohol and drugs. For some of us, it's sexual immorality like pornography and things like that. For some of us, it's anger. For some of us, it's depression. For some of us, it's whatever. For some of us, it's loneliness, and we just can't stay in a stable relationship. We all have our things that try to co-write our stories with us. And my question to you is this: what is it going to take for you to realize that Christ is the greatest author that could ever take the pen of your life? For some of us, we say, I know what you're saying, Vince, but I've gotten so off track that God can't fix these chapters that I've written in my life. Here's the beauty about the gospel. Here's the one thing. If I was to take the gospel and I was to say one word to describe the gospel, what would it be? And here it is: redemption. God can take the worst people and give them the greatest story. I remember when I was younger, I used to love the movie Remember the Titans. I say younger. I wasn't that much younger. I can't be too much younger. I mean, I'm only, 30? But I remember when I was younger, I used to watch that movie, Remember the Titans, and my daughter, Kira, loves that movie. And I used to watch it, and I used to always watch this movie and say, are they ever going to get along? Like, they hate each other. I remember Sunshine and the other guy, they hate each other, and by the end of the movie, they were singing, Motown together. And the big guy in the movie, he started singing his Motown songs, and I was like, I can dig this movie. That white guy saying I was like a black dude. I like this. And he started saying, ain't no mountain high. And I'll be walking through the house singing like that and everything. I'll be in the shower singing that song. But I remember watching this movie thinking, are they ever going to get it together? Because they're so far gone. Are they ever going to be able to connect together and become a team? And by the end of the movie, they finally get it all together. And it was not some fluke. It was not some accident. There was a lot of growing pains involved. There was a lot of healing involved. There was a lot of forgiveness involved. But eventually it got to that point. Can I tell you that before God can truly write your story, there has to be some healing involved? But here's the thing, with that healing, there's going to come some pain. Because healing requires growth, and growth brings forth pain. For some of us, we need to call some people and say, I forgive you, but also I'm sorry. In the church, we need to make sure that we tell people, I forgive you, I forgive you. But can I tell you something, that sometimes the most people that need to say I'm sorry are Christians? Because we think we're too good to mess up, and we're saying, oh man, I'm going to forgive them so God can finish writing the amazing story that he has for my life. I'm going to forgive them because they wronged me. And we don't realize that if we went back and looked at the story of our life, we'll see that maybe we've wronged other people. But here's the beauty, once again, of the gospel. Christ offers redemption. Today we're going to have our first story. It's brought by Mr. Eric Morris. Come on up here, Eric. Grab Cassandra's mic right there. Go ahead, you give up for Eric. Come on up here. Eric has an amazing story, and we're going to, I guess Quentin wanted us socially distanced, so we're going to be socially distanced. I'm going to scoot my chair just a little bit forward, and all right, here we can't pay you for telling us your story, but we can give you water. So, no, I wasn't talking to you, Siri. Hold on. Let me cut this off. But God gives us a story of redemption, and many of you probably don't know Eric because Eric is a super quiet individual. Eric comes in and he sits with Miss Gwen, and they sit over in the corner and they hang out and all that good stuff, and they've been going to church here for a while. And I remember the first time that I met Eric, I remember thinking, I'm trying to think internally, should I take this mic pack off or what? But I remember thinking internally, Eric's got it all together. That was my story. I was like, because if you met Eric the first time he came, he used to always wear a suit or a suit jacket. You remember that? He used to always wear a suit jacket. And I was like, dang, is he like a pastor of another church? They spying on us? What's happening? But one day Eric came, he said, man, I want to talk to you. He actually called me at home. He said, hey, man, this is Eric. You probably don't know who I am. And I'm thinking, no, don't. But I had to play it off, and I was like, yeah, Eric. He was like, yeah, the guy with the white hair. Oh, Eric. Hey, how you doing, man? How you get my number? No, I didn't say that. But he said, I want to meet with you. And he began to tell me his story. And I've started a journey with Eric. And I remember we went out to lunch, and I said, Eric, you mind sharing your story? Let's make sure you're on real quick. All right, good. I said, Eric, you mind sharing your story? And he said, absolutely. I said, we're going to be doing this series called Storytellers. And we're going to share your story this morning. And we talked a little bit yesterday, and I said, hey, Eric, that's how we're going to do it. I want to go by chapters because I believe in our life, the first chapter of our life is when we're born. We all have that chapter 1. And I said, Eric, what's your chapter 1? So go ahead, tell everybody your chapter 1 for me.
First off, I'm glad to see you do own a pair of pants.
Oh, man. That's what we're doing? That's how we starting this off, Eric? Okay.
I was born in 1963.
Ooh, that's a long time ago. No, I'm just kidding.
That's in Dallas. Grew up in the same house, never moved. A little short dead-end street. Everybody on the street was related. All cousins, aunts, uncles, So I think my childhood was pretty normal. We were out from daylight to dark, playing, running through the woods. You didn't worry about where anybody was at that time, or, and after dark, Mom would be screaming, come on.
Yeah, street lights come on.
All the neighbors, there wasn't no street lights there.
Oh, Lord.
And it was a dirt road up till I was a teenager, so.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You lived in like the country.
Yeah.
Man.
Just outside of Dallas. But, and I grew up as an only child, but I'm not an only child. I have a brother that is 18 years younger than me. By the same parents. My parents still live in that same house on that little street, but don't know anyone on the street anymore.
Wow.
Everybody's moved away. But, yeah, just hunting, fishing, the normal, going through school, and, I think it was a very normal childhood, just for that time frame.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. Last night we went out, we had the pleasure to go out to eat with Eric and Gwen and Austin and Kim. And we were talking last night about how my wife has my kids afraid of the ice cream man. And it's so weird because back in the day you heard the ice cream and you're like, go get the ice cream, exactly. That's the way it was. And I told them, my father-in-law, I wish I could get them here one day to tell their story because I was trying to prove this whole theory of my wife is crazy. Ice cream man is harmless. And my father-in-law goes, well, you have to understand, they had to check it past. They used to sell drugs over in Greece and all sort of kind of stuff. But my father-in-law goes, ice cream man is harmless. When I was ice cream man, I used to sell weed out the back of the ice cream truck. And I was like, not helping. You don't tell your story anymore. Don't let Rena hear this. Nothing. But back in our day, we could stay out and play, We didn't have to worry about none of this chaos that's going on. Kids weren't eating Tide Pods. We weren't flossing and throwing jugs of water and stuff. We just had a normal life. So if I'm correct, your parents are still married to this day. So you had a pretty average life. Your chapter 1 was what a lot of people would just consider, pretty boring. But
well, in some people's eyes, yeah.
They saw people's eyes. But as you got older, that's when chapter 2 hits. And a lot of times, I refer to this time in your life. A lot of people say the dark days, and I consider this to be a valley. I'm one of those Psalms 23 people. I believe that when you're going through a valley, that's where Christ is talking to you the most. When Psalms 23 says your rod and your staff, they comfort me, it's talking about him disciplining you or shaping you or getting you to a place where he's called you to be. So your Psalms 23 moment, your chapter 2, where things switch from what we would consider average to where you started hitting that valley moment. Can you sort of kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it was around 8th, 9th grade. I started experimenting with some drugs and had some older friends that were always drinking, so they would get me alcohol anytime I wanted, or I'd go hang out with them, And that become my normal, just hanging out with them every day. And, you know, I mean, through school I played sports, but I still did this every day, you know. And when I was 17, I graduated school early. I joined the Army. And I did my 4 years there, which drinking got real heavy during that time. And, you know, I always had a cooler full of beer or whatever in the car every day, any time of day. But it, you know, it hadn't really taken full effect on my life at that time.
Let me ask you real quick. During this time, were you still taking drugs along with the alcohol?
Mm-hmm.
So you were doing drugs and alcohol while in the military? And oh, wow. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you know, I was lucky through that stage of not ever getting caught, but it, you know, and alcohol, luck, there we go with that word, luck. You know, there's no such thing as you talked about it, you know. And, you know, God has been with me. He's watched over me, and I was always too blind to see that. I called it the luck, you know. But, yeah, the drugs and alcohol, and it followed me out of the military and, you know, and getting a job. The first shop I worked in, they kept a cooler full of beer, and anytime through the day, you go over and throw $1 in the box and get a beer out while you're working, you know. Running equipment, machinery.
Honestly, how many dollars did you throw in that box a day?
Probably 4 or 5, you know, throughout the day.
Wow.
But then I had my own when I left, you know.
Right. So you were drinking at work throughout the day, and then you left and had your own. Were you drinking and driving at that point?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you're drinking throughout the military while you're in the military. You were doing drugs while you're in the military. You get out. So this started while you're 8th or 9th grade. You get out, join the military, and then it sort of kind of escalates from that moment. You get out of the military. Now you have a job where you're actually drinking and also driving at that point. I'm sure at some point in time, because we've talked, you got married. Tell me a little bit about that marriage aspect of life.
Well, I've had 2 divorced families. You know, the first one wasn't that long. It was just a little over a year. And we were young, and we both liked partying, you know, and that just didn't work as far as, you know, we didn't get along if we weren't partying. We were at each other, and as we were partying, we were great.
Yeah.
So that one didn't make it but a year, and then I was divorced, and it was 8 years before I got married again.
Oh, wow.
But during that 8 years, I would just kind of run wild, doing whatever I wanted, you know, no concern for anyone or anything. I would use people, you know, just to benefit me or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that was then my second marriage, I was married for 28 years.
Oh, wow.
And had a house I almost paid for, only owed a couple of years, and lost all that, you know, because of the way I was.
Right.
And all I got out of that was my clothes.
Wow.
You know, so it's a total start over. But, you know, my drinking really affected that marriage because my drinking kept getting worse throughout the years. You know, worse. It got to where I was constantly drinking at work. And, you know, I'd quit beer by then. It was always liquor. And I kept it at work, in the locker, in my big toolbox, roll-around box that I used at work, you know. I'd go out to the car at break and at lunch, have some. And it, you know, I got to the point where I couldn't go but 3 or 4 hours without a drink, or I was going to be hugging a garbage can.
But at this point, you had given up the drugs.
Yeah.
You just had the alcohol.
My mid-30s, somewhere in there, I finally got away from the drugs, but alcohol just followed me everywhere. And it in my mind, the way I always looked at it is it helped me get over the drugs.
Right, right.
You know, it was my other crutch, I guess.
So let's talk about this marriage, because I know we talked about it a little bit yesterday. I know that you tried to hide this from your family. Talk a little bit about that. How, because you had to have it. We know that you're a functioning alcoholic. So how did you hide that from your family during this whole time?
I isolated a lot, and I would actually work 75 to 80 hours a week because it was easy for me to drink at work.
Right.
And, you know, I would just send the money home, and I was never there. I'll pay for everything. I'll just, you know. And they had it good. I was making very good money. And, you know, I would try to avoid all the family functions I could. I would make an excuse, you know. if I couldn't work that day or something, I would come up with some reason.
Right.
Or I would go and only stay about an hour and
Yeah.
leave, you know.
Wow.
And it, you know, it affected, at the time I couldn't really see it affecting like it was, but, you know, I was never there. And I have a 23-year-old daughter from that marriage, beautiful young girl. She's fixing to graduate college.
Wow.
She is just now kind of coming back around. You know, she held a grudge,
Yeah.
you know, and I understand that, and I'm accepting of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm trying to give her time and her space, but I really want her back in my life, you know.
Yeah. And what he said was so important is, here's the thing that we don't realize about stories. When you give your pen to someone else to author or something else to author, you don't even realize that it's writing your story. You think that you're in control this entire time, and you're not. He was working 70 plus hours a week just so he could drink. You've had 2 marriages that have failed due to alcohol. You've lost jobs due to alcohol.
Well, I will clear that up.
You clear that one up.
I've never been fired from a job.
Right.
Now, you know, after I'd go in about half spewed and somebody would say something I didn't like, I would show them a sign with my hand and get my stuff and walk out the door.
He would say, God bless you. That's what he's saying. God bless you. I'm out of here. Hope to see you at church Sunday.
It was nothing for me to walk out of a job, you know, and back at that time, I could go across the street and get another job the same day,
Oh, wow.
you know.
Wow.
It was easy then. It's not so easy now.
Oh,
you know,
it's not.
with my age and all that too.
What are you, like 30?
32.
Oh, okay, my bad. I didn't mean to undershoot there. So Eric and I'm going to share a little bit of our story a little bit before we keep going. Eric contacted me. He started coming to church here, and he contacted me, like I said, and I remember he said, can I meet up with you? I said, absolutely. And he told me a little bit about a story, which I would consider chapter 3, but there comes a time in your life where you reach rock bottom. Rock bottom is a hard place to be, because when you have to climb from that, it takes a little bit longer. And not only does it take a little bit longer, when you hit rock bottom, can I tell you that you don't float down to the bottom? You usually go crashing, screaming to the bottom. So when you hit rock bottom, you're usually bruised and hurt and broken. So before you can even get to a place of victory, first you got to go through the healing. Psalms 23, David, he sinned. He said, yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death. David had seen so much death during this time, and now he's saying, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. But here's the beauty of that story of David or Psalms, when he said, you make me lie down in green pastures. He said, you reneweth my soul, my cup runneth over. Can I tell you that when God grabs hold of you, he will not just put you in a place of solitude. He'll put you in a place of rest. And the place of rest is not always the most fun. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's painful. But when you come out on the other side, it's a beautiful thing. Let's talk about your chapter 3. Let's talk about your victory moment. And you're still getting to that victory moment, because like we said, when you hit rock bottom, it's hard to get back up there. So your parents were very involved in church. You grew up in the church, and I asked you this question yesterday. During this whole time span of you using drugs and alcohol, at any point in time that what you heard in church or the Holy Spirit, did you hear him screaming out to you saying, hey, you're going down the wrong path, you're doing the wrong thing?
I think it was more I didn't want to hear it.
Right.
It didn't fit my lifestyle, what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know, and my parents, they're still in the same church that when I was a kid, you know, and they made me go. I say that, you know, as a kid, when there were other kids there, I liked it, but as I got older, I just felt like, you know, it's not for me.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got my license, where I could do anything else, you know, I was gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't go back, and I didn't go for many, many years at all. I didn't want no part of it. It didn't fit what I thought a life that I was in control of, you know,
Yeah.
which I wasn't at all. You know, it was just spiraling down.
Yeah.
But, and like I said, they're still in that same church. My dad's a deacon in that church. But I don't want to say anything bad about a church, but that is not a welcoming church.
Right.
I was never comfortable. And, you know, it's almost like especially if you do have a problem, you're kind of shunned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it was a burden for me to go there.
Yeah. When Eric first came here, that was one of the things we talked about. When I sat here with him and talked, he said, I felt so loved at this church. I felt like people actually loved me, people actually cared about me, so on and so forth. And that was one of the things that drew him to this church, including that there's a black guy that preaches there who's pretty handsome. Right, Eric? Yeah. Amen. See, told you, Eric don't lie either. So here, when we sat here, one of the things I talked to Eric about is I said, here's the thing about change is in order for you to see that change, you got to change your habits. Because when me and Eric sat in here, and I'm sure you won't mind me sharing this with you, one of the things he talked to me about is even while we were sitting here talking is he was struggling. You were still struggling at that very moment. And he said, man, I'll leave work. And he said, before I knew it, I was sitting in front of the liquor store. And I was like, you didn't know you were going to the liquor store? He'd be like, no, I'm just here. He was like, I was there. And he was very open and honest with me. And here's my question to you. So you reach this moment, you reach rock bottom, you say, I've got to get my life right. What did you do at that moment? Because we know you went through AA and things like that. But what was the life-changing moment in your life that helped you open up your eyes and see that you had a problem and fix it?
Towards a little over a year ago, just a year and a couple of months actually, I started having these blackouts, which I'd never had before.
Oh, wow.
And, I'd be driving down the road and I don't know how I would get somewhere. I would stop somewhere like to get a biscuit in the morning. I'd pull over the side to eat it. I'd come to a couple hours later.
Wow.
I didn't know where I was or what was happening. And, I've never had that, but I've talked to some people that have it, and it's very bad when you get to that point. And I called into work 14 days in a row and used 2 weeks vacation. Sat in a parking lot that had a Kroger, so I had a restroom, had a Zaxby, so if I needed some food, I could eat, and a big old tree I could sit under in the shade. And I would sit there and drink all day, pass out, wake up, and drink. Oh, and there was a liquor store beside Kroger.
Wow.
So I could get out of my truck and walk, and that was my life for 2 weeks straight.
So every day you were drinking, going to Zaxby's. Did they start to recognize you like, what's up, Eric?
No, they didn't call me by name.
No, they don't. Okay. All right. Krispy Kreme does be my name. But get on my level. So, but you would sit there, you would drink, pass out up under the tree, and then every single day for 14 days. Yeah. So now you reach this point. What did you do to get out of this situation you're in?
One morning I left, like I was going to work again. I had moved back in with my parents. At this time it was after the divorce, or we had separated. We'd filed for divorce. And I left to go to work, and that same thing happened. I woke up about an hour later that day, and I was like, okay, I can't go to work. And then I was out of vacation, so I sat there for a few minutes. I drove back home and woke my parents up. They were still in bed, and told them that I had to get some help. So I went to a facility in Louisville, Georgia called the Bridges of Hope for 6 months. And it's a very spiritual program, very. And it's not a cushy little rehab. They don't give you all kinds of medicine to keep you calm. The only medicine in that place is Tylenol.
Oh, wow.
But you have everything there, from heroin addicts to coke to, people hooked on pain pills. Everyone is there. And you all live together. There was 60 men. But it's kind of like a work thing. You work 8 hours a day in the facility. You don't leave the grounds.
So you stay there the entire time?
You have a road crew, kitchen crew, cleaning crew, lawn crew, and they have a greenhouse and a garden crew.
Yeah.
And, throughout the day, we would have meetings and, group sessions and all that. And, 4 or 5 meetings a day. And there's no TV, there's no phones, no newspapers, no magazines. You can't get any in. They inspect your mail and all that. Your only communication is to write a letter. And right before I went to the Bridges of Hope, I met Gwen. And apparently And that was at my worst stage when I was laying in the floor, hugging toilet all day, every day, you know. And
So when they say for better or worse, you really seen the worst. Man.
We hung out for a few days before I left to go to the Bridges of Hope. And after 30 days, you're supposed to be able to get a visitor on Sunday afternoons. Well, that was when COVID hit. So I had to go 90 days without a visitor. And you really didn't get to make phone calls either. But since the COVID, after about 60 days, they let us call home on Sunday for 15 minutes.
Wow, 15 minutes and
That was
that's it.
all.
Oh, wow. Now, when you had a visitor, how long could the visitor stay?
From 12:45 till 4 o'clock, wasn't it? Yeah.
Wow.
But it was a 4-hour drive one way.
You drove 4 hours for this man? He ain't that cute.
Every Sunday.
I mean.
Every Sunday she showed up, and I'm like, I don't even know her. You know, I'd only known her a week.
What? Man, what you say? You got that Casanova spill.
Well,
Hey, girl.
It's the hair.
Oh, well. My wife says I got an island, so shut your mouth. So you get out, you come to North, you feel welcome, we sit down, we talk, and you would think that we sit down, we talk, he's at North, God has changed his life and everything. And I sat down here, we sat right there where I sat where Austin's sitting, he sat right next to where Tad's sitting, because I was like, you may have that Rona, I ain't trying to catch the Rona. I love you in the love of Jesus, but hey, we ain't gotta be that close together, right? See, that's what happened. He didn't know I was doing that, but that's what I was doing. But so what he said was, he's like, I really need to talk to you. He said, I messed up this week. And then I said, I'm on this journey with you. You messed up the next week. And we went to lunch together, and I said, you have to understand that with battles, there's going to be war wounds. You can't expect to just walk out and win instantaneously. That's not life. And with your story, there's going to be times where you're going to have to scribble some things out or write some things out, and you're going to have to go back and rewrite it. But I will never forget yesterday. I talked to Eric. Eric texted me, and we text back and forth periodically. And I remember when my wife went back to work, he said, how you doing with them kids? And I was like, they all alive, so I must be doing okay. But yesterday, I said, Eric, how you doing? And how many weeks have you had?
It's been right at a month now.
It's been right at a month with no alcohol, no nothing. Now, here's the thing that I love about Eric is, and this is something, a testament to at North is, and I've heard this a lot of times, and I love it. It blesses my heart, and it's not me, it's not Scott, it's Jesus and him alone. Eric says, what do you say about North on Sundays and Wednesdays and things like that?
And this is a strange thing for me, but I can't wait for the doors to open. I can't wait to get here. My first time here, more people welcomed me and talked to me than they did in years at other churches I've been to.
Man.
And I'm comfortable sitting here. Other churches, and now we'll leave here and go, it's already 1 o'clock. But everyone here, has touched me in a way, just watching them enjoy the service. I might not know your name, but I can look around and see people are happy.
Yeah.
And that means the world to me.
Man, that means a lot to me. We said every Sunday during our leadership devotion, we say ministry starts before the first note is played. This is so true. The one thing that he said was more people welcomed him and made him feel welcomed here than that has happened at any other church. Can I tell you that when you give hugs and you love on people, you have no idea what they're going through? Let me ask you a question. How many of you guys knew that Eric was struggling with alcoholism when he came to this church? Nobody. How many of you knew that Eric was struggling trying to find some type of inclusion at a church when he came to this church? See, when we say love God, love people, and we say we mean it, it's not because it sounds catchy. We say it and we mean it because people need to know that it's because of the love of God in us that we're able to love them through whatever we're going through. People's stories are being written every single day. We can be a part of it. We can be part of their defeat, or we can be part of their victory. We help make that decision. We help make that decision. That's why it's important for us to come here. And like Scott said that one time, give that 20% you got, you milk it for all it's worth and trust God with the rest. That's what you got to do. Why? Because there's more Erics that are going to walk into this building. There's more Erics that's looking for a place where he can have a handsome black pastor that wears shorts and doesn't have as much hair as he does. And he can find a church where people are happy to be here. And he can find a worship leader that sings with so much passion and conviction. There's going to be people another Eric that walks through this door that needs a new chapter in their book. So Eric, as we wrap this up, and I'm going to read a couple scriptures, I want to ask you a question. Is there anything that you would like to add? Because I'm not one that wants to give them the cliff notes of your story, although we really are. Your story is really in-depth and it's amazing. And we're going to give them cliff notes. But if they were reading the back of your book to see if they wanted to pick it up and take it home with them, what would you say to these people here?
Exactly what you said about other Erics. When you live like I did, as long as I did, you get real good at hiding. And you let the people see what they want to see.
Yeah.
That's what gets you by. Yeah. But I'm tired of hiding. I don't really fully know who I am because I haven't had enough time to figure that out. But I know I've gotten closer to God in the short time I've been here than my whole life.
Man.
And you asked me a question yesterday, what I thought I could do in my past to change that.
Yeah. And
I thought on that a lot. And if I did something to change it, that's just me writing again.
Amen.
I totally believe, and this has helped me once I figured this out, I had to go through what I did to be sitting here talking to you today.
Amen. Amen. Man, my man. Listen, give it up for Mr. Eric Morris. Listen. Thank you so much, brother. Love you, brother. Man. That's a hard story to tell. That's a really hard story. You guys know Joey's story. Joey's story is sort of kind of along the same lines. And I think that if you guys really stopped and started asking people their stories here at North, you would see stories of redemption. The Bible, it puts it this way in Ephesians 1:7. It says this. It says, in him we have redemption. It says, through his blood, the forgiveness of sin in accordance with the riches of God's grace. Can I tell you that God's grace never runs out? It never runs out. It's not that God doesn't want to give it to us. It's that we don't want to accept it. Part of redemption is forgiveness. Forgiveness has to go two ways. God gives it, but you have to accept it. He says, hey, I forgive you. You messed up. I talked to Eric the other day when Eric and I were sitting here talking. I said, Eric, here's the thing that you have to do. You have to accept the forgiveness that God is offering you. Here's some things that God does. One of the biggest things that God does in the Bible is when he forgives, he renews, and he gives you an identity. If you think about the woman in Mark 5:34 with the issue of blood, I love that scripture. After she came to him and he blessed her, he healed her, and he said this. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. And if you look at Mark 2:5, it talks about the paralyzed man where they lowered him through the roof, and it says, when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, he called him, son, your sins are forgiven. Can I tell you something? That you have an option. Eric has an option. Eric could be like, you know what? I'm just a filthy, dirty alcoholic. But at some point in time in his story, God came in and he gave him a new identity. He said, you're not just an alcoholic. You're my son. When God comes into your story and you don't look at yourself as what the world defines you as what your circumstances define you as, and you say, God, what are you calling me? And when he gives you that identity, once you accept it, amazing things happen. If you look at the story in Matthew 26:13, Martha, the prostitute, when she decided, I got to see my daddy, and she went and she washed his feet with the perfume from the alabaster box. And it says this, it says, truly I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in her memory. And at that moment in time, he said, hey, I know you haven't lived the perfect life, but I'm going to use your imperfections to draw people closer to me. Can I tell you that God can use your imperfections? God can use the chapters of your story, the good chapters, the bad chapters to bring people closer to him. But here's where you have to come into play. You've got to realize that God saying, I forgive you is enough. It's enough. One of the things that me and Eric spoke about when we sat here in the sanctuary was this. I said, Eric, you're going through some things. We talked about some things that we didn't talk about today, and as you get to know Eric, maybe he'll share that story with you. But I said, Eric, have you forgiven yourself? And what did you say, Eric? And I looked at him and I said, Eric, before you can move forward, you've got to forgive yourself. For some of you in this room, I said that to you today. You've done some things in your past. Maybe you did some things earlier today. Maybe you did some things earlier this week. Can I tell you that God offers forgiveness? He offers it every single day. You go to him, he offers it. But here's where your part comes into play. You got to accept it. Eric said something, and he didn't say it yesterday. I was hoping he would say it yesterday. I'm so glad that he did, that he finally said it today. He can't change anything of his past. The only thing that he can do, and Scott hit the nail on the head, the only thing that you can do is take those bad things and use them for the glory of God. When I get on this stage, there's sometimes, some days, some weeks where I'm going through some things, some weeks where I don't want to be up here preaching, but I take everything that I'm going through and I say, God, use it. Look at the story of your life. Look at the chapters in your book. They're not all perfect. They're not all good. For some of us, they're horrible. For some of us, you're just starting to write your chapter. And I asked Eric this question yesterday. I didn't ask him today, but the question I asked him, I said, let me ask you a question, Eric. Did you ever think that you would end up in this place? And he said, no. For some of you guys, I want to tell you something, that if you're playing with sin, if you're taking the pen out of the hands of God, you could be the next Eric. You could be that person that reaches rock bottom. Eric, tell you, he reached rock bottom. He blacked out. I didn't even know he was 2 weeks in a grocery store parking lot. Some of y'all are like, oh my goodness, I can't believe he did that. But guess what? You could be that exact same person. That could be the next chapter of your story. Here's the beauty of the gospel. Like I said, it's redemption. In 1 Corinthians 7:23, it puts it this way. It says, you were bought at a price. Do not become slaves of human beings. What does that mean? The world's going to tell you one thing, but God, he bought you. The only person that can define you is Jesus Christ and him alone. I'll never forget during the first student takeover, Lane Hartby preached a sermon, and Madison Day she preached. But I remember Lane preached, and he preached with a lot of passion and conviction. And I remember he gave a call for salvation. And on that day, his brother came up to the altar, and he gave his life, or rededicated his life to Christ, surrounded by his family. But watch what happens. Put that picture up, Joey. Later on, what happened was this, is we had the opportunity at the creek right across the street to baptize Logan. Logan said, I'm going to change the chapter of my life. This is where I put that pen back in the hands of God. Logan's a quiet guy. Super quiet. But once you get to know Logan, you see such an amazing person. I tell Logan all the time, man, when you're behind that computer, I feel good. Last time Joey was behind that computer, I fell over a speaker and the whole room shook. Logan doesn't realize it, but Logan has an amazing calling on his life, and it may never be to stand on this stage and preach the gospel. I could be wrong, but can I tell you that him pushing buttons on that computer is just as important as me standing up here presenting the gospel to you guys? But see, if Logan hadn't have said, God, change my story, use me. Look at that smile. Y'all probably never seen that smile on Logan, have you? That boy don't smile for nothing, especially when he on that computer Sunday morning. He'd be like, I hate this computer. I hate this thing. I hate you. I hate everything. And I was like, hey, you want some coffee? I hate coffee. But look at this. See, this is what happens when you change your story. Something happens inside of you, and it brings something out of you, something amazing out of you. Look at that smile. Look at Joey smiling with his head full of hair. I hate people with head full of hair because I don't have any. But look at this. That day, Joey was able to baptize his son in that creek. It was an amazing day. That day, I was able to baptize my daughter. That day, I was able to baptize somebody that don't go to church here, Paul Bishop, and his son, John. That day, I was able to baptize so many amazing people. Why? Because they said, you know what? I'm not perfect, but I accept the forgiveness that Christ is offering to me. I accept the forgiveness that Christ is offering to me. Come on up here, Scott. This last slide right here, it puts it all in perspective. Listen, watch this last slide. It says this is only a chapter, not the whole story. Can I tell you something this morning? That I don't know what your life looks like. I don't know where you are in life. I don't even know what your story looks like, but I can promise you this. This is one thing that I can promise you. You ready? The thing that you're going through, I'm going to pass this to you. The thing that you're going through, it is not your entire story. This is just the chapter. This is just the chapter. Don't allow this chapter in your life to define you. Don't allow what you've been through to define you. God is not done writing your story, but this is where it has to start. You have to say, God, your forgiveness is enough. Your forgiveness is enough. Your forgiveness is enough. This morning, while the worship band plays, this altar is open. I want to encourage you this morning that if you say, man, I've got to get my story right. I got to get my life right. I got to get my story right. I've taken the pen out of the hands of God, but I got to put it back in his hands. And you say, but I don't know if he'll accept me. Let me tell you something, that if God can accept the woman with the issue of blood, and if God can accept the paralyzed man that was dropped through the roof, if God can use a prostitute story to change lives with the gospel, then God can surely use you. If God can use me, somebody that has lived a rough life, somebody that went down some rough paths, somebody that used to get drunk, somebody that used to take drugs, somebody that has anger issues, somebody that's dealt with if God can use me to stand up here on Sundays and preach the gospel and believe every word that is coming out of my mouth, then God can definitely use you. Guess why? Because God doesn't want perfect people. He wants obedient servants. That's what he wants. That's what he wants. So this morning, if you're here this morning and you say, that redemption you're talking about, I need it. That forgiveness you talk about, I need it. That story that you're talking about, I want to experience it. If you're here this morning, you say, God, you write my story. We want to pray over you. We want to pray for you. If you don't feel comfortable coming up here, you come grab somebody. We'll pray with you right where you are. But this morning, I don't want anybody leaving this building without experiencing the greatest thing on the face of the earth. And that's when your daddy says, you are forgiven. Let's stand and let's worship this morning. All too low.
When the mountains fall and the tempest roar, you are with me. When creation falls and my soul is on your mercy, and I walk through the fire, my head lifted high, my spirit revived in your story. And I look to the cross, as my failure is lost in the light of your glorious grace. The ruins come to life, the beauty of your name, rising up from the ashes, forever you reign. So we'll find refuge in the shadow of your wings. I will love you forever, forever I'll sing. If the ruins come to life, oh, if the ruins come to life, when my world caves in, so my hope will cling to your promise. When my courage ends, when my heart finds strength in your presence, I walk through the fire. I walk through the fire, my head lifted high, my spirit revived in your story. I look to the cross, as my failure life in your story. And I look to the cross as my failure is lost in the light of your glorious grace. The ruins come to life in the beauty of your name, rising up from the ashes of forever you reign. So we'll find refuge in the shadow of your wings. I will love you forever, forever I'll sing. Till the ruins come to life in the beauty of your name, rising up from the ashes. God, forever you reign. So we'll find refuge in the shadow of your wings. I will love you forever, and forever I'll sing. Let the ruins come to life.
I love that song. Listen. There's something beautiful about when God brings the ruins of our life and he brings life into them. There's something so beautiful when God takes broken pieces and he says, you're not dead yet. You're not dead yet. I got so much that I want to do in and through you. In and through you. In and through you. Listen. That's why I look to the cross. My failure is lost. This morning, if you feel like you are lost and that you're broken, God's arms are wide open. And the same God that breathed breath into your lungs when you took your first breath is the same God that wants to put life in the dead parts of your life this morning. This morning. This morning. This morning. When Lane Hart stood on this stage and he proclaimed the gospel of salvation, I promise you that nobody in that room was expecting to see his brother walk down. Nobody. Can I tell you that when we went down to that creek, I was not expecting to baptize my daughter after she had been through so much hell in her life. Can I tell you that there's some Sundays where I step on this stage and I'm like, God, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth because I'm broken myself. You want me to speak life to people and I'm dead myself? And he says, give me the pen and watch what I do with it. And can I tell you that when God takes the pen, when God takes the broken pieces and he orchestrates it, something so beautiful comes out of it. Something so beautiful comes out of it. The Bible reminds us in Romans 3:23 that we're all sinners. We're all broken. We've all taken a pen from our daddy. But it says this. It says that he sent his only begotten son, Jesus Christ, to come down, to take the pen back and change the path, to change the story that we were writing for ourselves. But this is what he says. He says in Galatians, Paul says, for I'm crucified with Christ. What does that mean? God, you take the pen. You take it. I can't do it on my own. I've already tried. I can't do it anymore. And you write my story. And can I tell you that each and every chapter of my life, there's battles, but it always ends in victory. It always ends in victory. This morning, if you say, I need my chapter to end in victory, the Bible tells us that if we confess with our mouth and if we believe in our heart that Christ came, lived a perfect life, he died, and he rose in victory, the Bible tells us that we'll have salvation. That's redemption. That's victory. This morning, with every head bowed, every eye closed, I'm going to ask you a question. If you say this morning, I've got to get victory, I've got to get right with Christ, or I need to give my life to Christ, I want you to do something for me. Lift your hand up as high as you possibly can. Nobody looking around. I see you. 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 This morning, we're going to say a prayer. And here at North, we shout the prayer as loud as we can. And I want you to do me a favor. I want you to shout this prayer. I want you to shout it as loud as you possibly can, because we're helping some people get out of some things that they're going through in their life. I want you to shout it as loud as you can so that the people on live stream can hear it. I want us to shout it because the people are allowing God to rewrite their story. So let's pray. Say, Father God, I'm a sinner and I need to be saved through your grace, through your redemption. Forgive me. I accept that forgiveness. I believe you sent your son to come and die and rise again. And I believe he's preparing a place for me. So, Father God, life is yours. My story is yours. Use it for your glory. Amen. Let's give up for those that gave their life to Christ this morning. Those that say, God, you write my story. Those that say, God, use me. This morning, Dio's going to come up and make some announcements. But before he comes up, I want to invite you to invite somebody next week. I got my buddy Corey and Rebecca coming in. They're going to talk about her battle with COVID and her near-death experience, but how God reached into death and brought her life. And if you know somebody in your life that needs some life spoken into them, next week they need to be here. Next week they need to be here, because it's going to be an amazing story of the redemption and the grace and the mercy, but most of all, the sovereignty of God. So make sure that they're here. Again, I want to remind you, Easter, mark it on your calendar. What day did I say? What day did I say? Make sure you're here Easter Sunday. God, you're going to go in Easter Sunday, right? We're going to go in Easter Sunday. We're going to worship and we're going to praise and we're going to celebrate the victory that only God can give us. Amen? So remember this week, let God write your story. Come on up here, Theo.
To give another round of Eric and his wife Gwen, because when you share your story like that's so complex and so deep. I don't know about you, but you touched me today. Through your story, I can see that I needed as well to make sure that I get my story right and put it back into the author, and that is Jesus Christ. So I appreciate that you're blessed with you and your wife, and I say your wife too, because it's both of your story. She's with me. And same thing goes for my wife. She's with me as well. As I go through my story, I'm preparing myself to take a deeper dive into this ministry with Jesus Christ and with Pastor Vincent and the Lord's family. So I thank you. I really do. I appreciate that. You're blessed with me. Now I do have a couple of announcements I want to go over. So tonight we do have Aftershock. And so Aftershock